Okay, so I have been wanting to film this video for a while and it is February 29th and that is National Rare Disease Day. So I figured now would be the best time to film this video. I am making this video because, like, I'm gonna title it in the title, the disease, because when I got diagnosed, I was trying to do a ton of research on my own, and I honestly had no clue what it was about and what this would encompass, like a life living with the disease. So maybe if you're stumbling upon this video, maybe you just got diagnosed. So I wanted to make this to help anybody out if they stumble across this video. So I'm trying to make this video no cuts, no edits, so I might kind of get fumbled in my thoughts. But I have idiopathic subglottic stenosis, and that is the building of scar tissue and inflammation right above my windpipe. So in my throat, if you think of like your windpipe and it has like little ridges in the tube, right above those little ridges, my airway swells and constricts with scar tissue, and it blocks out air because it's like in your airway. So I'll start from the beginning. In my senior year of college, I didn't notice anything was really happening differently. But I was like coughing pretty consistently. Kind of like that. I'm sorry, that's so gross. So I was coughing kind of consistently, and I only remember this because when I was telling some of my best friends from college about my diagnosis, they were like, it makes sense, you like used to cough a lot, you know, like when you weren't sick. So then in so that was in spring of 2022. Then fall of 2022 rolls around and I started my first semester of law school in Chicago. And everything was going great. I found all my workout studios that I live nearby and I was having a great time. It gets to be around October though, where something didn't feel right. I was running out of breath super quickly. I remember the first time I noticed it, I was in a like heated yoga sculpt class, like kind of like Core Powers yoga sculpt. And I was doing jumping jacks and I got so out of breath and lightheaded from the lack of oxygen that I had to stop doing jumping jacks, and I was like, gosh, I don't know what's wrong with me. So I go to urgent care and I was like, maybe I have strep, bronchitis, something. I didn't have any of that. I can't remember if they gave me some kind of like antibiotics or something to help with the cough, because this is when I started coughing too, because I was coughing because I couldn't get air in. And obviously didn't have any of those problems. So I'm thinking I might just have a cold or something. Like I just might be sick and my body's under the weather, so I can't work out as well because I've been active my whole life. So then, see, now I'm kind of losing my train of thought. It continues. So this is like October going into November. I'm still having these issues and it's getting every day almost, it's getting worse. So my walk to class is like about 10 minutes and I couldn't walk to class while calling my mom and talking to my mom on the phone, because the combination of walking and talking was, I couldn't breathe. Like I had to stop and catch my breath like that. So things progressively started to get worse. It got to the point where then, you know, I can't call my mom on the walk to school, but not only that, but I have to take breaks multiple times on my walk to school. And I would walk up like one flight of stairs in my law school, and I would have to sit in a chair, and I would just like be like, I would sound like I just ran a marathon, and I'd be going dizzy, like vision's kind of going black, lightheaded, because I didn't have enough oxygen. So October to November, this period of time, I realized that something's worse than just, something's more serious is going on than just like me being under the weather for a little bit. So I get in touch with my doctors at home in Madison, Wisconsin. It's my cat. And so I'm going home through October and November. As this is progressively getting worse, I'm going home to try and see what's wrong. And this was incredibly difficult in my first semester of law school, because this would be obviously very difficult no matter what, like in a job too, but you can't, it was very difficult combined with law school. So I'm going back and forth from home. I remember I went home almost every other weekend for testing, and when I'm home, the first thought is asthma, you know, like you have asthma. I had gotten cats, my 2 cats, in like end of August, and I live in a small apartment with them, so they were thinking asthma, something's wrong with the litter box maybe being too close to where you are, dry winters, which didn't make sense because I've lived in the Midwest my whole life. I'm doing these tests, and now it's December rolls around, so I make it through finals, and I am doing these tests. I do this one breathing test where I think it's technically what you need to take to be like officially diagnosed with asthma. They were telling me I had asthma. They're like, this is asthma. They give me all the inhalers, different kinds of inhalers, to see what worked. Obviously none of it worked. Like one of them kind of helped for like a day, but looking back, I think that was just like a better day. And so I take this breathing test where you sit in like a glass little box, and you have a tube, and you follow like the instructions. There's like a nurse standing there, and she's like, okay, in, and then breathe out, you know, like that sounds so silly, but it's like you do these rhythmic breathing things, and they gather the data, chart it, and then they can basically say for sure, yeah, you have asthma. So I take that test in January. So all of December, they're like, this is asthma. How I was thinking at this point is I'm kind of like, crap. You know, like, I don't think an inhaler is gonna cover what this is doing to me and how this is just like completely debilitating my entire life. I couldn't, no way work out at this point. Absolutely no workouts. Walking to and from class, I had to reserve time to get to and from class because I couldn't breathe. I was coughing all the time. I also forgot to say that my breathing, like when I would go like that, was so loud, and it sounded like Darth Vader, kind of like raspy and so loud, that I would walk into the enormous library in my law school, and people sitting like across the whole library would know that I went into the library because my breathing was so loud from like having to walk from the elevator to the library, whatever. It was a mess. and I just couldn't do anything. I couldn't do laundry, I couldn't make the bed, and I was just like, I don't think an inhaler is gonna fix this in my life. I was definitely concerned about how I was gonna fully live a normal life if this was what asthma was gonna be for me. Cut to late January. I take this test over winter break and I head back to Chicago for school for second semester to start. It is the second day of constitutional law and I'm sitting in class and my phone, my texts start blowing up on my laptop and my parents are saying, you know, UW Health is calling. That's Madison, Wisconsin's health, like their hospital system. UW Health is calling. They say it's really urgent. They can't speak to any of us. Do you have a chance to go call them right now? So my parents wouldn't have texted this to me in the middle. They knew I was in class if it wasn't urgent. And originally I think I was a little excited. I'm like, maybe they found, you know, I don't know, maybe they know what's happening. So I take my phone, I go out in the hallway and I see all these missed calls from UW Health. And I get on the phone and I call them and they're like, hi, is this Caitlin? Yeah. And the nurses can't tell you certain stuff on the phone, obviously, that a doctor would tell you. They're not allowed to, and they also don't want to freak, I mean, everyone knows this, they don't want to freak you out, you know, like when I'm 3 hours away in Chicago, they're not gonna, you know. So she's like, something, one of our doctors noticed something in your test results. It's very urgent. We need you to come home back to Madison immediately. And my heart sinks. Like I remember dropping to the floor and being like, what are you talking about? Like, what do you mean serious? You know, I was like terrified. I thought I was gonna die. It was very scary. And she's like, I can't tell you anything. I'm so sorry. It's extremely urgent. Can you be here tomorrow? And of course I said yes. So I go back into con law, text my parents, finish con law, and just like, what am I gonna do? You know? And then that night I got in my car and I drove home. And the next morning or maybe I drove home the next morning. Sometime in the next 24 hours, I make it into the hospital. I go in, and at this point I'm used to everyone staring because of my coughing. And imagine this coughing issue, like constant coughing. In some of my like older YouTube videos, you can like hear my breathing, and I like talk about this diagnosis a bit. You can like hear my breathing, and I can't even get a sentence out without having to like stop for breath in the middle of it. So this combined with the COVID fear that was still happening, it still is, like people are still scared of COVID, but this was early 2023. I was so used to getting glares everywhere I went. It was horrible. I wanted to scream at everyone and say, I'm not sick. I don't know what's going on with me. Please mind your business. And everywhere I went, everyone's like, oh, you're a little young to be having these breathing problems, you know. So I go and I talk to the woman at the front desk. I'm pretty frazzled. Both my parents are there. And oh, stop it, Maggie. Sorry, she's gonna tip this over. So I get back to the room with the doctor, and it's me, my mom, and my dad. And he sits me down, and right away he shows me the graph and shows where my breathing, it's a ISS, which is the disease I have now, has a pretty common way it shows up on a graph. So it obviously was portraying itself as what it is, ISS, but this doctor thought that it was something else because ISS is so rare, he had no clue. So, cut to the chase, he explains this to me and basically says, you have Wegener's disease, which I think is an outdated term for that disease. But I cannot for the life of me remember the correct name right now. But Wegener's disease, from what I gleaned from those like 2 weeks I thought I had Wegener's disease, was that it can take decades off your life. And, you know, it'd be like, I'd be lucky to make it to 60. So I've never passed out before. At that point I hadn't, and I go dizzy, I almost pass out, puking everywhere because I was so stressed. I mean, I thought, it basically felt like he had told me, you're gonna die. He kind of did tell me that. It wasn't that serious, but in that moment it was very scary. And I go and I get my blood work done then, and I go home and I'm just a wreck. The people who were getting blood, or who were at the hospital staff who were working and taking blood, stayed open late so that I could get in and get my blood, because they were like, we need to get these tests rolling. And the person who came in to take my blood was someone I went to high school with, and it was actually really comforting to see them there, you know, just like a familiar face. So then I go home, I'm panicked, but I go back to school because, like, what am I gonna do, you know? And those were a horrible 2 weeks. My parents were a wreck. I was so scared. 2 weeks later, I get another call, and they say, you know, we might have some updates, can you come back? So I go back. Second semester was even worse. I think there were like 2 total weekends I was in Chicago because I had all these stinking tests to do. So I go back to Madison, and they call me into another clinic, and I just go with my dad this time. I am a wreck because the last time I was in this building, the last time I had this talk with the doctor, they gave me really bad news. So I'm like shaking, sobbing, it's horrible. I go back there and I met Dr. Daly, and he is in Madison, Wisconsin, and he is just like an angel on this earth. And so he sits me down and he basically says, so you don't have Wegener's disease, that's incorrect. You do have ISS. And I was like, are you sure? Like, are you just saying this? Like, what, am I gonna get it changed again? Like, and he's like, no, you 100% have ISS. And he said, give me the whole gist of it. It's extremely rare, and from what my perspective of it is right now is that it is only or mainly found in white women of Northern European descent, and it can pop up at any point in life. Normally it happens after 40s, like midway through your life. Mine was kind of an earlier diagnosis. So we go through all the options of what to do. The route that I picked that worked with where the inflammation is in my throat and with the goals and things I want to do in my life, it kind of removed some of the options for me. But what we ended up going with was surgery. So now I just got my 3rd surgery. Was it like a week, almost a week and a half ago exactly. So I went in for surgery. Now at this point in the story, it's like February 2023. They get me in for an emergency surgery, not that day, but like a week or 2 later. And like I said, now I've had 3 total, like about 6 months apart from each. And what they do is they take they put me under general, and then they take a laser and laser out the scar tissue. And then they inject with a needle, they inject steroids into the walls of my throat. It's not my throat, but like the area that got swelled up. And then the steroids hopefully reduce the inflammation's speed of growth. So Dr. Daly can't perform the surgeries. So then I met Dr. Francis, who is also God's gift to this earth. And he has performed all of my surgeries, and he's just the nicest person in the entire world. And they're both at UW Hospital, UW Health. And you can look them up online. So I've gotten 3 of the surgeries. All of them have went really well. I've been recording for 20 minutes already. I hope this isn't annoying. I hope well, I don't hope anyone's diagnosed with this, but if you are, I hope this is helping. And so the path I went down is surgery. I was very concerned because I thought that this was going to be something that I needed like 4 times a year for the rest of my life. It's now looking like 2 times a year for the rest of my life. Likely we'll get it down to 1 as we build up the steroids. Like as each time I go in and they inject steroids, hopefully it decreases that speed of growth a little more. It's also such a new disease that they're researching it right now. So both Dr. Daly and Dr. Francis think that there's going to be a lot of new solutions coming out soon. But right now, this is what it's looking like for me. So on the day of my first surgery, it was the beginning of March, first week of March 2023, I was really nervous because I had no clue what to expect. And I had been like out of working out for so many months. I would go on, I remember once I like got my diagnosis and stuff, I was like, okay, I'm not gonna die, I can like push. I'd gone for like 1 or 2 runs, and it basically just felt like if I go a mile, it felt like I was sprinting for the whole mile. It was horrible. I don't know why I pushed myself through it. Well, I do, because I would go crazy if I wasn't like moving my body physically. So on the day of my first surgery, I signed up for my very first half marathon. And, or was it then? I think maybe I signed up for like I think maybe I signed up for the whole package. So that was maybe when I signed up for the Chicago Marathon. And I'd never run a race in my life, not even like a 5K or anything. So besides like maybe a turkey trot. So I signed up for the 10K, the half marathon, and the marathon, all in the year of 2023 through the Bank of America Chicago. And that's kind of been my what's the word I'm thinking of, like my routine. My little good luck thing I do is around the time of my surgery, on the day of or around, I sign up for a race. I just signed up last week, right before my surgery, for 2 half marathons in 2024. So that's kind of my motivation, good luck, because I know how it feels. I think my battery might be dying. I know how. Okay, I'm back. The lighting might have changed and this angle might be a little different because my battery did die. I'm gonna make the rest of this quick. I remember ending by saying like I remember what it felt like to not run. So now every time I get surgery, I sign up for a race. Recovery for me takes 3 days-ish after surgery. And I cough up a lot of mucus for the few days after. But it is definitely better than the few days before I go into surgery where I'm like at my lowest and can't breathe. I actually could probably find a picture of my throat because I get pictures after surgery. But if like this is the size of a normal person's airway, mine will be like this. That's a good ratio, if you can see that ratio. Also, something about this disease is, in terms of options, because this is my airway, this is something where if I wouldn't get this fixed, if I were to just let this go, I mean, I would pass out from lack of oxygen, and then I'd go into the emergency room, they'd try and see what was wrong, they'd see it's blocked, and then they'd put a tracheostomy in, which is the breathing tube down there that like typically you associate smokers with having. So that's what would happen if I did nothing with the disease. Obviously, like I would die, but they would put that in before I would die. And some other options that they gave me, there's this surgery that they talked about where you can cut a portion of your, like here are the ridges I'm talking about, you know, like you can cut a portion where the inflammation is and they can remove it from your throat. I'm not talking about this medically correct at all, so don't like take my word for it. This is just what I kind of remember. And so then they remove it to hopefully take away the big part of like where the inflammation is. For me, that wasn't really an option because the inflammation was just so, like if this is my tube going down, it was just like so spread out. It wasn't in like a tiny chunk where they could like remove the chunk, you know, if that makes sense. And that would alter my voice. So I want to be, well, I'm in law school, I'm going to be an attorney, and I want to be a litigator in a courtroom. So it wouldn't really mesh with my career goals to have like a really soft voice where I couldn't speak up. Like it would just completely change my voice, which would really piss me off. So that's an option. Another option is, I think this is the last thing I have to say, is continual steroids, like where they don't put you under. So between these like clearing out surgeries that I call it, they can bring you in to the hospital and you gargle the numbing, a ton of what's called lidocaine. Try and numb up your throat. They squirt it all in your nose. It's like all, they try and numb it as best as they can. And then what they do is they stick a huge thick tube in your nose down to your throat. That is how they kind of check to make sure that like how your ISS is progressing, is they take a tube through your nose down. That didn't bother me. I mean, it's uncomfortable, but went totally fine. However, when they do the injections, it's these, when they add the steroid injections to this tube, they have to use a bigger tube that has space for the fluid, the steroid fluid, and a needle. So they put it in me one time and I was out cold. It was the first time I ever passed out. I have a huge fear of passing out. I have since college. So that was so traumatic. I woke up puking. Clearly I puke when I'm like anxious. And, you know, throwing up, they had to like hold me on the little bed I was in because I was like shaking, you know, like, it was a mess. I won't get into it because it really doesn't matter now, because I told them I did not feel comfortable trying that again. They tried it one more time after that, and they got a little bit in before I said I'm gonna pass out. Like, if you've ever passed out, you like feel it coming, you know? And they took it out before I could fully fall into it, but I'm not doing that anymore. I have a little breathing tube thing. Why am I forgetting what it's called? It's like a little tube that I like breathe into like that, and I can chart my numbers on it. And that's what I did in the beginning. From my first surgery to my second surgery, I was charting my numbers and watching them like slowly decrease, and my breathing slowly gets worse until it hits a certain number, and the number, like, it depends on your airflow capacity with your strength of the disease. I know there's a Facebook group chat, and I think I might post this video in there. There's so many inspiring people in there who have this significantly worse than me. So I'm very blessed that I'm still able to run. Like, the marathon was the hardest thing I've ever done because I was training for it through not having a completely open airway. Follow me on Strava and you'll see my high heart rate and slow paces. Not slow paces, but it definitely debilitates my ability to do certain things still. But I feel so grateful that I can still do that, and I know a lot of people can't. So that's another part of the reason why I run, is because I'm not kidding, every single time I run, I'm thinking of the individuals in that Facebook group who can't, and who their disease is too fastly progressing, or they don't have access to people like Dr. Francis and Dr. Daly, who just, like, they saved my life. But I forgot where I was going with this. I chart my breathing. Now, I say now like it's been like 10 years. Like, it's only been almost a year exactly since I got diagnosed, but now I can feel my breathing and I'm in tune with it more, and I know when it's time to go in. I have learned that I push it too far because I tell myself like it's not bad enough yet. And then the last time I got into trouble, and it had got pretty bad to the point where I couldn't work out, you know, had trouble getting to class, and I'm not gonna let it get to that point anymore. But it's a learning process. But I think that's all I have to say. This was a really rambly video. I hope that, I don't know, I'm just thinking like when I was doing my scouring of the internet when I got diagnosed, if I would have seen a video like this of someone being like, you can get better and it's gonna be fine. I mean, I just think it would have like changed the whole thing for me. So if you're watching this and you just got diagnosed with ISS, it is a struggle. It's not easy, but I mean, it's not gonna kill you if you don't let it, and you can stay on top of it. And it's just something that makes me more unique now, is how I look at it. And I've noticed who my true friends are and true supporters in life, who regularly check in on me, and you know, it's kind of like the people you think to reach out to first when you get diagnosed with something like this. Says a lot about who your true friends and your like forever people are. So that's all I have to say. This was rambling. I'm kind of embarrassed now, but that's all. Happy National Rare Disease Day.